The next one is rather a famous one, and I'm very proud of this. This is an interview which took place at the Molsham home in Molsham Street by the First Lady on air, Winifred Collins. It was with Carron Garden of BBC Essex and myself. Carron carried out the interview whilst I held the microphone and prompted Mrs. Collins, who was staying at the Molsham home. As you know, she died not so very long ago, but she used to live in Whitford Road next door to my parents, and it was with great pleasure I did that interview.
And they all worked at Marconi's except me, and I didn't. And they asked for somebody who would, and they gave my name. But I never worked at Marconi's and I didn't know anything about it. And so they said, "Will I go?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know if you like, I never thought anything about it." And of course it was in the very early days, and we didn't have microphones and things like they have now. And we had a, what did we have? And I had like a telephone with the earpiece that I spoke into. And I had to hold that, you see. They told me what to do, and I did it as best I could. And I did it one night. And then they said, "Would I go another night?" So I said, I think altogether I went 3 nights. And in the early evening, I think it was. And so I never thought anything about it. I thought, well, that's it. But it wasn't ever so long afterwards that they started asking me about this. And there's Mr. Ditcham and Mr. Oh, he was a man who was working the very sort of, what should I say? But you've got pictures of it, haven't you? With, yes, so there's better than I can tell you. But other than that, it was all right. Then it all dropped round there and dropped down again. Everything forgot about it. And it was coming up for the, the 50th? The 50th anniversary. And there was a major somebody, I don't know what his name was, and he said, "I wish there was somebody here that knew all about this." And this Mrs. Betty somebody, she said, "It won't do." She said, I can get her. But that was the beginning of it, and of course they fetched me, you see, and so I had quite a busy time one way and another, but I never thought anything about it at the time. I never did anything else, no.
Can you take us right back to that time when you were asked?
Pardon?
Can you take us right back to that time when you were asked to take part in the broadcasts? Can you remember what it was like when you were asked to go along? What did you find there?
I went to the works, you see, the workshop there, and there was no, well, it was a workshop, there wasn't anything else in it, and a microphone thing, and we just stood and they said, we didn't have a piano or anything like that, and he gave us a tuning fork, and Eddie Cooper, who took me, he gave the note and we started off, and that was the end of that, didn't he? And then they said, "But I'd come back next night," and so I did, and apparently it worked, so I went another night, and then somebody said, "Well, did you get paid for it?" I said, "Oh, no, and in the end they gave me 10 shillings a night in those days, which is a lot of money, and I did 3 nights, and I never heard any more about it. And that's when I tell you this, what was her name? Betty somebody. Hans, that's it. And she was the one that started it up for me again, and she came to my house and asked me if I would, do it again, and I thought, well, I said, well, what do you want me to do? Because you see, Eddie Cooper had gone away then, there was only me. And so I did what they to cut it short, I did what they asked me to do, and that was the end of it. And then they had something else, and they had, so Mrs. Hans said, well, do you mind the press coming? And I said, well, I don't know, what are they? So they came and fetched me, and then the Works, I think it was the 60th anniversary. And they entertained my husband and I to lunch at Marconi's, and we went there, and I didn't do anything there then, and I answered questions, and I didn't do anything else then. And then with this lunch, Sir Robert Telford gave me a medal, which my son has got, and it was commemorate, I think it was Marconi's 100th birthday. And he said to me, when he gave it to me, well, Mrs. Collins, he said, this is yours, and there isn't any more, that's the only one. And so his name was on it, and my name was on it at the bottom. And I said to Mrs. Hand, I said, oh, what do I do with this? Well, she said, I should keep it, Mr. Collins, because she said, it's quite a thing. And I mean, when you're not interested in anything yourself, and other people are, you don't quite know what to say.
Did you realise, back in those early days, how important a thing it was you were involved in?
Oh, no, I never thought anything about it. And when we went in the room, she said, oh, the press are here. And I said, well, oh. And I got up, and the room was full of men, loudspeakers, and what have you. And one or two of those asked me questions. But, and this gentleman, Miss Major somebody, he was there, and Mrs. Hunt. And I think that was a lot. So that was then I came away, and I hadn't seen anything about it since, till just recently. What's made it come up again? Do you know? Country, and they had, it was somewhere where they make the things, you know, and well, in those days, to tell you the truth, I wasn't all that interested. There was a lot of people more interested in me. But as I say, I sometimes wonder, but I must say this, I expect that I go on that thing, but when I was in Little Church with my son, and there was all those people there, and it suddenly struck me, and I've never said this before, never. It was all started through me. And I little did I ever think it would be like that, ever. I mean, I was the one who, and they improved, well, of course, improved on me. And then they had, Madame Melba came, but I wasn't allowed in the room with her. I stood at the door. When they went past me, there was a gentleman walking behind her. Who it was, I don't know. And he tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, young lady, do you realise you made history? And I said, oh, did I? Well, I never thought anything about it. But apparently after all this palaver, I must have done. But I really was the person who first started it. I know that sounds, well, important talking, but it isn't so really. I mean, that's just what happened. I can't tell you anything else.
Can you remember what you sang when you went along those evenings?
Well, I sang oh dear, I forget what it was. And then I sang a duet with Mr. Keeper. There were two voices. So we sang a duet together. But we only had a tuning fork to set us off with. We didn't have any music at all. And they were working in this shop, and when we walked through this shop, because I had to ask them, they got a wheelchair for me because I couldn't walk very well. And when we went through this workshop, they all stopped working. And I said, oh dear. Oh, well, they said they wanted to see what you were doing, sort of thing. Well, to me it didn't seem anything very important, but I expect it was. Apparently so now, because it's a long time ago. I was 22 and I'm 95. So, I mean, I think I've done very well to remember all the things I have. But I haven't thought, and other people never thought anything about it. Neither did I myself, really. I mean, they're the people who made a fuss about it, not me. And, but I must say this, that Marconi's have been very good. If there's been anything special, they have always asked me to go. And so I've always been. And even now, I think I must have been a bit of use to them, if you know what I mean.
Can you remember Marconi himself? What was he like? You never saw him?
Never saw him.
That day that you watched Dame Nellie Melba, can you remember, where were you? How were you watching?
Well, she was singing in a workshop like I did, but she had a carpet on the floor when she kicked up because she was singing on a carpet, and we were outside, and of course she never looked at me, naturally. I mean, I just saw, and somebody said when she got there, she said, because the poles were there then, you know, the high poles. And she said, well, if you think I'm going up there to sing, I'm not. Well, I said, you haven't got to. But anyway, I saw her, and several other gentlemen spoke to me, but who they were, I don't know.
Do you remember what she sang?
Yes, Home Sweet Home, I think, was one of the things she sang. And the other thing, it was a song, I think it was a song, something called Down in the Forest. I knew that, but I didn't say much. I didn't know much about it, but I heard her sing. I was outside and she walked past. I never spoke to her. So, that's all.
So you didn't realise, at the time, you didn't realise that what you were doing, what you were taking part in, was so historic?
Oh, no, I didn't think anything about it. I mean, I did a lot of singing when I was young, and now I can't sing a note, but I used to go about singing a lot. And of course I knew a lot of songs and that, and I used to sing ballad songs, you know, not but I can't, there's such a lot that I couldn't remember them all. No.
Peter was telling me you were in a theatre group. Is that right, in Chelmsford?
It was a concert. It was a concert party. And I don't know, but I think I'm the only one that's left of that one, because I had a letter from Freddie Manning, who ran it. I had one or two letters from his daughter, and she lives in Bournemouth, I think. But I've never seen any of them. And the other one, the person who was the pianist, her name was Miss Pond, and she married and like the rest of us got old, and she died a little while ago. And who else? I don't know.
What can you remember about the equipment and what the room looked like when you went along to that factory in New Street for the first time?
Well, I mean, it was I think they were making the boxes or something. They weren't working because we went in the evening. We went in the evening after work, but we had that, and they just had this. I mean, I know he was trying to get through, and he mentioned all the railway terminus, you know, to be broadcast. And that was Mr. Ditcham. Mr. Ditcham, there's a picture of him. I think you've got one of those. And that was he sat there and talked into a microphone here, which I didn't know what it was. He was reading all the terminus of the trains.
That's Dame Nellie Melba.
That was Madame Melba. And that was a red dress. And that's, they told me after, I have sung into that microphone, and they told me that was made from a cigar box, the actual thing. And she just held it, but that was much, much more important than we had. I mean, when you pick up the telephone, you know, you speak down here. Well, they took that off and you spoke. They put it where the earpiece was, you know, so you spoke into that.
Do you remember when you watched Dame Nellie Melba and you knew that she was doing it for real, whereas you'd just been doing the test transmissions, hadn't you? How did you feel watching her doing it? Did you know that she was then broadcasting to the public?
Well, I suppose really I should have felt honoured at the time, but of course I was only outside, I didn't hear. But I did write to the manager of Marconi's at that time, and I said, would I be allowed to go and hear her? And he wrote back and said yes, but I wasn't to take anybody with me. So I didn't, I went by myself. I stood there and watched her go, and I knew when I...
Did you speak to Dame Nellie Melba? Did she speak to you?
Oh, no. No. I didn't speak to her at all.
She was too grand?
Well, I suppose so, I don't know. Well, I didn't put myself in a way, to tell you the truth, because I thought if she starts asking me things, I should be absolutely floored. So I couldn't start.